What outlawing abortion does is it makes more unsafe abortion.
Outlawing abortions absolutely decreases the number of abortions in society.
Welcome to another episode of Hear Both Sides. I am Nina.
I'm Michael.
And we're your hosts. Today's topic is abortion, Roe v. Wade. With us today, we have Judy Norsigian. Judy is a co-founder of an online platform and book called Our Bodies, Ourselves. She served as the executive director of the organization from 2001 to 2015 and is currently the chair of the board of directors.
We also have Monica Snyder. Monica is the executive director of Secular Pro-Life. She's been working with SPL since 2009. Monica has degrees in chemical biology and forensic science and takes a particular interest in biological facts and peer-reviewed research related to the abortion debate. Opposed to Hear Both Sides is an attempt to get people to think broadly, think openly, expose themselves to different opinions, and make important, nuanced decisions about what they believe. We make really short, cool episodes that have 6 questions with 2 speakers in 12 minutes.
So decide to listen and listen to decide.
So question number 1, what would you say is the most compelling argument on the pro-life versus pro-choice debate?
It's the moral and just thing to do. And I have to say that failing to advocate for the most disadvantaged in our country, particularly over the past decades, has weakened the mainstream reproductive rights movement because it's allowed the right to expand the protection of the fetus and criminalize pregnancy more broadly. This has led to the surveillance and policing of Black mothers in particular, whether for drug use, purported neglect, or just having, quote, too many children. There's a ready blueprint for those who want to enforce current abortion bans, down to hospitals calling on police officers. The policies that we have seen in the past have really vilified stereotypes about Black mothers and other women of color.
So our position is that we recognize the biological fact that the human organism, the first stage of a human organism's life cycle is the zygote. So we recognize scientifically that we are talking about human organisms. And we believe that the discussions of personhood, of when a human organism is morally valuable, they all end in very arbitrary criteria that not only exclude embryonic and fetal life, but also end up excluding or at least undermining the value of humans already born that we all generally already agree are valuable people that merit basic legal protection. In a nutshell, the argument from a secular perspective against abortion is that we want to create a society that values and protects all human life, all members of our species, from the beginning of our life stage until the end.
Is there a point in time at which the fetus becomes a human being with an inherent right to life? How do you determine that point?
This is one of the 2 absolute core questions of the debate. When is a human organism a person with moral value that merits protection? Our argument is that all the points you pick once you have a human organism in existence, all the points you pick after that become arbitrary. So a lot of people will talk about viability, which is a moving target with technology. A lot of people will talk about consciousness and cognitive ability, but where that line is drawn, especially if you talk about human-specific cognitive ability, is very unclear and often pushes past birth. And we basically take the position that the point at which you merit protection to not be killed is when you exist. And we take the position that you exist when your body exists, which starts at the beginning of your life cycle with the zygote.
My own personal perspective is that a fetus becomes a human being when the fetus is born. This is a matter of religious interpretation, belief, moral, ethical beliefs. I personally don't have a strong view about whether it's right or wrong to have these beliefs. I think you should have the beliefs that your religion and you are drawn to. My objection is to try to codify this into laws that apply to everybody else that would violate other people's religious beliefs and their understanding of when that human life begins. No one person has the corner on this, and I find it objectionable that some individuals claim that they do.
Aside from moral considerations, do you believe there is a legal justification in overturning Roe v. Wade?
There's absolutely a legal justification because we already have legal precedent that establishes the right to bodily autonomy and many other legal principles that are violated when you tear down Roe v. Wade. By tearing down Roe v. Wade in the way that it was done, we have opened the door not just to decimating access to abortion as we've known it. We are opening the door to many other rights. We've threatened access to contraception, and many people don't realize that the Dobbs decision is threatening so much of what we've come to take for granted, not just access to abortion.
Yes. Now, understanding I'm not a legal scholar, but my understanding is that even when Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, there were pro-choice legal scholars who agreed with the effect of it, that it allows legal right to an abortion, but they thought the reasoning for it was very poor because the Supreme Court, they found the right to abortion implied in a right to privacy. They found the right to privacy implied in parts of the Constitution, and the whole thing seemed very hand-wavy. And then later on in the 90s, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, they looked at it again. And there were some of the justices who, again, thought Roe v. Wade was not really properly decided from a constitutional law perspective. But by then, society relied on it so much they didn't want to overturn it. So they tried to clarify it. But it's always been controversial in terms of the legal thought process for Roe v. Wade. A lot of people have thought that it was not a good Supreme Court decision. When Dobbs came out, people were saying gay marriage is next, contraception is next, all these things. It's not.
Okay, now I understand what you're saying.
We care about abortion. We don't care about gay marriage.
Okay.
So that's what I want to say.
So let's think about how to say that in a really clear way, because it is an important point.
So there's two subpoints to this. Specifically, people are saying gay marriage and contraception are next for a couple different reasons, but a big one is that Justice Thomas wrote a concurrence in which he said not only was Roe v. Wade wrongly decided based on substantive due process and right to privacy, but everything after that we decided was wrong in the same way. Not the conclusions. He didn't say I'm against contraception, but he said the process was wrong. We should revisit all of it. And people took that to be like, because gay marriage, contraception access, all those things were the same process. And so people were like, I knew it. They're going to come after all of this next.
This is just the beginning.
And the thing is, there's a couple things. First of all, Thomas didn't say he had a problem with gay marriage. He had a problem with the process they got to it, but also nobody else signed on to Thomas's opinion.
Okay, number 4. Are there exceptional cases where you agree that abortion is the best option for moral or for health considerations?
Now, keeping in mind that everyone has a different idea about what the word abortion means, but generally speaking, yes, there are. Secular Pro-Life, the group that I work for, we believe that if the woman's life is in danger, abortion has to be a legal option. And it's not because the child is unimportant. It's because there's no benefit to both mother and child dying. And it's also because if her life is in danger, that is self-defense. And it's tragic, but it's necessary. So we definitely think there should be exceptions for those kinds of cases.
Aside from a case where a mother's life is at risk, are there other examples?
So we don't take official positions. My group doesn't take official positions on these, but I do think there's a lot of gray area and a lot of room for debate about in terms of if she has been raped, in terms of if there is a fetal anomaly that is not compatible with life, and that would involve a lot of suffering. I think that those are both cases where we need to have more open conversations.
Okay.
Well, I might personally take affront at someone's decision to have an abortion for frivolous convenience reasons. For example, oh, I just want to get pregnant 4 months later, not now. A reason is, taking a trip somewhere. Now, nobody's ever done that. But at the same time, I would never say I want to criminalize that act or I want to prevent that act through a law. These decisions have to be personal, and they might be for reasons you or I don't like, but they might be for really good reasons in the minds of many others, not just the person choosing the abortions.
Is there some compromise that you think most Americans could live with?
Most Americans support access to first trimester abortion. No question about that. That is why medication abortion is so popular in the minds of many. And right now, more than half the abortions in this country are performed using medication abortion.
Number 5, does outlawing abortions increase or decrease the number of abortions in society, and why?
Outlawing outlawing abortions absolutely decreases the number of abortions in society. And I want to be very clear about this. I don't mean it only decreases legal abortions and they all get illegal abortions instead. I mean that outlawing abortions decreases the total number of abortions. And it does this for two reasons. First of all, people who are already pregnant who might have otherwise gotten an abortion, a proportion of them will not, either because they don't like the stigma of it being illegal or because they can't access it. Also, outlawing abortion is correlated with lower unintended pregnancy rates and greater uptake of contraception. Another stat is that half of the women who get abortions annually were not using any form of contraception at all in the month that they got pregnant. They found that states with more abortion restrictions had higher uptake of women using highly effective contraception.
Well, actually, it doesn't do that much to change the number of abortions. What outlawing abortion does is it makes more unsafe abortions. Most research shows right now that if you take a place that is very restricted in terms of access to abortion, you'll have about 37 abortions per 1,000 women between the ages of 15 and 44. In the least restrictive states and regions, you'll have 34 abortions for every 1,000 people. But that's not that different. What happens, though, is that more and more of those abortions that do happen are unsafe and harm is inflicted.
Next, we asked Monica and Judy to listen to each other's responses. Here's what they had to say.
For the recent election, I was encouraged to hear about men who felt strongly about the rights and well-being of their wives and daughters, and they said that they planned to vote for candidates who supported these rights. These men are among the many in this country who understand that bodily autonomy is fundamentally a rights issue, not a privacy issue. I often wonder about the true motives of those who oppose legal abortion, but are willing to allow for exceptions only when a pregnant person's life is at risk. What about instances of rape, when a continued pregnancy would force a person to relive the violence of that rape for years to come? Is this position, advocating for this single exception, merely a way to make restrictions on abortion access more palatable as a matter of public policy?
There's two broad points I want to make. First, abortion restrictions substantially reduce abortion rates. Judy cited international studies finding similar rates, but they don't account for variable unintended pregnancy between the two groups of countries they looked at. So countries where abortion is broadly legal, 70% of unintended pregnancies are aborted. Countries where abortion is broadly restricted, it's 50%. It's a 20-point difference. It's a big difference. You have to look at the unintended pregnancy rate to see the effect of the laws. The other issue I had was she talks about how she believes a fetus becomes a human being when the fetus is born. And then she argued that religious freedom demands we don't tell other people when they have to believe the fetus is a human being and when they have to make reproductive decisions accordingly. But that's a radical position. 80% of Americans oppose elective abortion in the third trimester. And the idea of allowing abortion for any reason at any stage is radical domestically and internationally, but religious freedom arguments would say we have to allow that. I think religious freedom arguments are actually a red herring. I think the issue is when the fetus is a valuable person. And Judy was also concerned that the Dobbs decision means contraception and other issues are threatened, and I disagree. That one is kind of complicated, but I'll send you a link to a Twitter thread I have about why that's not the case. Judy was concerned the Dobbs decision will affect other issues like contraception, and I disagree. In the majority opinion of Dobbs, Alito said, "We emphasize that our decision concerns the constitutional right to abortion and no other right. Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion." And you can see the link to my Twitter feed for more details on this.
Be sure to share this episode with your friends and your enemies, because it's really easy to take sides when you only know one of them.